Okay, are you on?
Are we ready?
You
No, I'm
on?
not on yet. Okay, guys, the shear is starting. Thank you.
I'm on the top tonight. Simcha, I'm actually on the top tonight. I was on the bottom last night.
Okay, shh.
No?
We're going live. Quiet, please. Simcha, it's staying up for the shear or going to bed. There's no in between of reading a book. Those are the options.
Just put this.
Hi, Simon is watching. Wow. Hi, how are you? Long time no see.
Hi, Kaya.
It's hard to know if these people are really who they say they are. But Jonathan, remember Jonathan?
Let's do that.
Jonathan.
Centered.
We're starting in a few minutes. Sorry, we're a little bit late. But we'll get there.
I have to move.
I'm going to change
You
things.
also need a pen. What's the options right now? Trying to shear.
Mom?
Give us a second, a minute.
Yes,
Is it possible for Rob Carson to see this?
it's possible. Rabbi Feierstein has Facebook.
He does.
He does. Well, then we could let Rabbi Feierstein know that we host a city share every Tuesday night.
But you told him, remember?
It's possible I did. I don't remember.
Remember you were speaking to him for something? That, the...
I don't know what I did wrong.
Are you okay? You ready?
We're ready to start. Emma. We have a couple
Okay.
people also coming.
Feel free to
Who are you going to join us?
start.
There we go.
Shmuel, pass me the cookies.
All right. Tonight's class is a little bit different. Going to be a little bit different. And to be frank, it's because I'm a little bit different. The events of Lag Boimer and following Lag Boimer, you know, everybody is trying to grapple with it. And it's interesting, to me anyway, before they happened, right before Lag Boimer, I was davening at 7:70 in the morning and I found a sikha, a Rebbe sikha on Lag Boimer. And I just decided, I had no idea, I didn't prepare it. I just said, well, this will be the sikha for the class. And it was only after the events of Lag Boimer happened in Meron that I actually started learning the sikha. And I hope tonight, well, we will share it, but at the same time, I hope tonight you'll find it somewhat poignant in terms of how do we understand Tikun Olom in a world that looks like it's gone crazy, in a world that looks just the opposite of what. Remember, let's just remind each other, for people who weren't here before, the definition of Tikun Olom. We're taking the word Tikun the way the Zohar takes the word Tikun, and that's interesting in itself. I just thought of it. We started our first week with the Zohar from the Shimon Bar Yochai. And the Zohar tells us in Pasuk Eliyahu, which we read on Shabbos evening, Eliyahu started to say, and he speaks about Eser Tikunim. The 10 spheros are called Tikunim. And we put on the table the idea that Tikun, has a simple meaning of fixing. When you mesakin something, you fix it. But what you do is you put it back in order. In other words, something which is broken, you put back in order. And that's the word Tikun, L'sakin Olam. He made 10 spheros, 10 arrangements in which to order the world. So if he made 10 spheros to order the world, it means everything is echoing the 10 spheros. What do we got to fix? Well, the fact is that there was a brokenness, a few brokennesses that occurred. Besides the brokenness that we've experienced on Lag Boimer this year, there were many brokennesses. And the very first one was the breaking of the world called Toihu. When the world of Toihu preceded this world and it broke, all the shards of Toihu fell down into this world. Guys, I don't know, people still know about Humpty Dumpty in this age? Anybody know who Humpty Dumpty is?
I mean, I do.
So you know, everybody at the table does.
Don't think I have a tiny brain. I have a big brain filled
But
with
you have to
memories.
have a long brain for this, because Humpty's been around for a long time. Do you know the rhyme?
Yep, yeah.
How's it go?
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
And Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall
And he fell.
That's
Or
not-
That was
you
like
had-
a sad
Anybody
ending.
out there want to offer?
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again.
So all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together, and that's our assignment as humans.
And that's
Can
what?
we write
That's our
stuff
assignment.
when we
to
have
put
get
the
assignment?
world back
What's our
together.
what?
It's
When you get
our
an assignment at
assignment.
Oh,
school, you have-
assignment.
Assignment. God,
When you get an assignment at school, you have to write it.
well, this you have to
This
write
is
it.
for life.
Yeah, this you write it
Oh, a
with words
life
of Torah. You
assignment?
think it, you
Yeah.
act it,
You
you
don't
do
do
it.
this until you die.
You got a lot to do here. So all the king's horses and all the men couldn't do it, but God said you can do it. What is He saying? He's saying to us, you can rise above despair. And there's plenty of reason for despair. I want to read you something that I'm telling you this. I don't want to start like that, but it's tremendous hashgacha purpose.
The one device.
That a bunch of things have occurred just in the following of Lag BaOmer. So I happened to be at a Fabringen, and the
have a-
Fabringen, the one who was
I
Fabringen.
have a little joke.
Let me finish. Okay, you tell your joke first.
Phones, the one things adults can't survive with.
With?
Phones, the one thing that adults can't survive with.
Can't or can?
Can't survive
So I don't
with.
With or without?
Without.
Oh, without.
Oh,
Oh,
Get the joke? Like every day you pull out your phone at least 5 times.
at least.
Unfortunately, that's not even a joke. It's just
it's
reality.
a
and
reality.
sad.
Right? All right, let's go on.
It's sad.
It's
People are
addiction.
addicted.
Addiction.
All right, so this is a saying at the Fabringen. The one who was Fabringen opened up a sikha, actually a letter, the Frierdiker Rebbe. And in part, it reads as I'm about to read, and I asked him to send it to me because the part that I'm about to read really became poignant for me.
And connects to
And I
Humpty
want to
Dumpty
see
sat
if
on
it.
the wall.
So here's what the Frierdiker Rebbe says. I'll just translate it in English. He begins like this. It is an answer to a question. A person writes the Frierdiker Rebbe about some situation. It doesn't really matter. And he's in a state of despair. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes to him like this. He writes like this. Despair.
Hello.
Oh.
Ready?
Hello.
Listen to this language. Despair is the poison which hangs on the tip of the sword which destroys the world that Hashem created. Despair. The poison on the tip of the sword that destroys the world that Hashem created. And it takes a person down from the way of life and puts him in front of the opposite.
Do we have
Can I have
a?
this answer?
What?
We're doing preliminary.
Preliminary. It takes a person out of this world and takes a person away from the purpose for which he was created, which is to light up the world with the light of Torah and the sweetness of mitzvahs. So, in the same breath, the Frierdiker Rebbe tells us, reminds us that we have this purpose, which is to light up the world. And in the same breath, he begins by talking about despair. So here we are in this world where this paradox is going on. The paradox of Lag BaOmer, which is the wedding day of Shimon Bar Yochai, and the events that surrounded it. Death at a wedding. Kavor was talking about this, and we were on the way over. Something actually occurred, death at a wedding. Today, I was further blown away by a woman in our class. We have a daily Tanya class. She was at a wedding last night, met a guy who had just recently got all on fire about Yiddishkeit in Baltimore, and he was killed. Same night.
Wow.
Same night. By a random bullet.
Apparently,
So-
it was like anti.
Yet today. The saga continues.
Wait, what?
The saga
The Baltimore thing was a couple days ago.
It was it was over the weekend, but it
Yes,
wasn't
yeah.
like one. It was after that.
It was like an. It was like a. I mean, people are saying it's like it was. I mean, anti-Semitic. Yeah.
Whatever it was, it's this. We're living in a very interesting. I mean, interesting is not a good word. Poignant, tearing time when we're asked to do two things at once. We're asked to mourn, and we're asked to celebrate. And
Sounds
Lag
like
BaOmer was the kunz of
Sounds
it.
like me.
In the very same moment, we were in anguish, and we were at a wedding. Yom Hilula of the Rashbi. So that's our introduction to the fact that we're going to learn a sikha tonight from the Rebbe How about Lag Boimer? And it's a bit of a departure from the way we usually learn, which is more, what do you want to call it? Deeper Chassidus, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I just couldn't ignore it, so I brought it to the table.
That's great.
All right.
Okay.
So here it is. We'll pass it out.
Okay, sure. Oh, it's a whole packet. Okay.
There we
Yes,
go.
if you want one. Yeah, and you want to share with me?
Go and move down. Go and move.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to start. For those of you, I sent the text out. If you have it, you have it. If not, I don't know if you do. A lot of people on this Facebook are not in the Chassidus K WhatsApp. By the way, if you want to get the sikhas or the memorim that we do before the class, just text me 917-445-9805. 917-445-9805. I'll put you in the group. It's nice to have the text in front of you. All right, so in any case, we've been learning pretty straight about Tikun Olom. And it's 1, 2, 3. The world collapses, you put it back together again, right? The world lately, and from my perspective, has got such momentum of cracking that it's very hard, maybe even impossible, to stay up to speed with the avoid of putting it back together again. So is that really it? Is it either this or that, one or the other? It's either despair or joy, or
Well, apparently
is there
it's both.
something?
It's death at a wedding.
It's death at a wedding. So apparently the answer is it's both, right? And getting to both is something the Chassidus tells us is much deeper than either or. Remember, when we started to have the classes like the field lecture about Tikun Olom, the world is masakin by taking opposites together. We're sitting in Chevra Ahavas, we're always taking opposites together and merging them. It's neither chesed nor gevurah. It's the amalgam of them, which is teferes, or the inter-inclusion of all of them together. So somehow we have to include our despair in our joy in our despair, and Rav Shimon embodies that. Hi, good evening. So, as I started to say, Adam, we're learning a little bit differently tonight. Usually we're learning Maimorim, usually of the Alter Rebbe more than anybody else. Tonight we're learning a Sikha of the Rebbe, mainly because of me being caught up in a paradox of despair and joy over what is going on in what went on in Lag Boimer and what went on since. Now this Sikha, we're going to start here over in the second column. Over in the second column, you see a mark there. Yeah, we're going to a little bit deeper about what it says in the Gemara. But before we go over there, the Sikha was said on Shabbos immediately after Lag Boimer. Now, this Sikha we're learning not in the Shabbos immediately after Lag Boimer, but 3 days after the Shabbos after Lag Boimer. What's significant about that, and it actually touches on a halacha, which I found out today a lot of people don't know, but it's interesting halacha, that Shabbos, if Shabbos stands here, the 3 days before it are blessed by the Shabbos which is coming, and the 3 days after it are blessed by the Shabbos which is behind us. So this last Shabbos that we were in blessed Lag Boimer, which was on Thursday, and it continues to follow us into Tuesday, today. I mean, it's actually nightfall, we're just over the cusp, but we're still in the same ha'ora of that Shabbos. And that Shabbos is connecting halachically Lag Boimer with today. What's the halacha? The halacha that I referred to is that
Havdalah, you could do
Havdalah,
Tuesday.
exactly. The Havdalah you can do 3 days after the Shabbos because the ha'ora of Shabbos is still here. Now, of course, there's another ha'ora of Shabbos. Every day when we daven, we say Hayom Yom Echad b'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbos. Every day has a Shabbos within it. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is ultimately redemption. How do we know this? Because redemption is known as Hayom Shekula Shabbos, the day which is entirely Shabbos. And so in the midst of this Shabbos, in the midst of this redemption, we have are experiencing the darkest part of Golos. So we're going to now start the Sikha. Okay? I think we're going to we're going to begin on the second page. Yeah. Begin on the second page. Page 272. Now, in this class, Adam is new. We have a process by which we ask anyone who would like to begin to read, anyone who wants to. And we don't force anybody. And if you want to read, we'll volunteer. If you need help translating, I or anyone else will help you. So we're going to start here in Ois Yud, B'kesher le'inyan histalkus, in regard to the event of the histalkus, which was the day of Lag B'ayin. Anybody volunteering?
Sure.
Adam? No.
So I can see it clear.
And if you can translate, fine. If you need help, let me know.
Just a little dark. Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kesher
Mhm.
le'inyan histalkus.
And speak up, because we have a mic right now. Okay? So that people on the world can hear you.
Kesher le'inyan histalkus. Nimar. What is it?
Yeah. Do you want to translate for us? Take a few bites at a time.
Okay.
If you need help translating.
Keshers.
In relation, okay,
In
I'll
relation to the idea
translate. Yeah. In relation to the topic of what's histalkus,
of the order.
huh? The passing away. But it's called histalkus. There are various words for passing away. The most common one is patira. A person becomes pata. Your pata.
Histallik also means like disappear, right?
Histalkus is what? Disappear?
Kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
or like just like
It's from the root word is siluk. And this word siluk is a word that, of course, everyone knows comes from the Tzimtzum Harishon.
Of course, yeah.
And, everyone knows this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. Even little children on the street
First grade student.
who don't remember the Humpty Dumpty rhyme will know about siluk.
the
because they
adults
learned.
do.
The Tzimtzum Harishon is characterized by two different tenuas, two different movements. Siluk and miut. Now, siluk is the word says departure, but it isn't a departure like God is no longer here.
It's like hidden.
God's revelation is no longer here. The revelation of the infinity and the allness of God shrunk. Now, for those of us, and I hope some of us at the table are learning Tanya, the Alter Rebbe speaks in this chapter of Tanya and yesterday's and today's Tanya about uses the pasuk from Shlomo HaMelech, "Hamayim apanim l'panim." Like water, the face you show to the water is the face you get back. What face did God show to us when He created everything in order to bring about our existence? He showed the face of shrinking back. He held Himself back. In his language of Tanya, haniach atzma. He put Himself aside. So just as He put Himself aside, what's the expression? The face that you show to the water is the face you get back. So we should be reflecting back our putting ourselves aside. And I think that this is something that we have to think about, that our initial feelings are coming very strong. Everyone is talking about one another. But what would happen if we just stepped back from it, as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did? Histalkus. He shrunk back from this physical life. Go ahead.
His physical life.
This life in the body. This is the day of his histalkus. And when this is said, Kibiyim,
Kipiyim histalkus Niklaus Ha'olah Kal Avodah.
Avodas Hashem. On the day of one's departure, on the day of one's departure, all of one's avodah, all of one's service of Hashem becomes included and drawn up into the Godhead. Can we continue?
Sure, I just kind of faded.
It's Oila Kol Avodas Hashem. All of his service goes up to Hashem.
Ha'amal,
The ha'amal,
v'harukni,
and all the striving that he did on the spiritual level went up.
sheyamala hanefesh b'chol yemei
Chaya. And all the work and toil that he did in his Torah, in his lifetime, is gathered up.
Mekaven shivasha'a. I can't even see this.
You can't see?
Well, it's kind of faded.
Okay, if you're having trouble, we can move to someone else. Okay. Akiva, anyone else want to take on? Go ahead.
Should I read?
Yeah.
But you're nominating me? Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you. Okay.
So all of his work, it goes up. All the things that he did, the days of
Oh,
his
thank
life.
you. Okay. Great.
You got the Grammy, Esther.
Okay, you did Yimei Chayeha,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
מכיוון שבשעת ההסתלקוס מסתיימת עבודת הנשמה שהייתה צריכה לפעול בגוף. And since at the time of departure, the avodah of the neshama, the work of the neshama is finished.
Work of the neshama in the body.
Because it's no longer needed to be actualized in a body.
So, I mean, this is one, first of all, a way to look at passing, at death. I mean, besides a knee-jerk reaction that, oh my gosh, he died. It's hybrid. I mean, you remember Gimel Thomas? How many of you were around Gimel
I
Thomas?
was.
I
we
was
were.
in Florida, but I do
little-
remember Gimel Thomas.
We were all
yeah.
alive, but at various
And
Stages in the
stages
game.
of comprehension.
Okay. For those of you, I mean, everybody out there, I think, is aware of it. If you remember, or if you don't remember, you may not remember this, that the experience of Gimel Thomas was exactly an echo of this deep, deep brokenness that you couldn't imagine. Tears. And at the same time, dancing.
What?
Dancing.
People
In front of
dancing?
People were like,
770,
Mashiach is here.
in
Right.
front of 770,
They just had like
this was like it.
the
you know,
pinnacle of it.
It was like the pinnacle when
Mashiach is here. That's
and
this is
and
it.
I mean it was the embodiment exactly of the stalkus of Shimon Bar Yochai, the tzaddik of the passing of the tzaddik, which we'll speak about a little bit later. So there's the whole idea here is we're pivoting. We're on a pivot point of paradox between the absolute dark and the highest level of light. That's where we were holding. We're always holding there on Lag Baimer, but this Lag Baimer, it became very apparent. A feeling.
אפילו כשעלה לווי פעם נוספת בגילגול. Wow.
So this is an interesting little aside. The body goes out, the soul goes out
Right.
from the mind. Now, even if it were to come back in a Gilgal,
הרי מסתיימת אז העבודה שיש לה לעשות בגוף זה.
even if it come back in another body,
It's
you would say
actualized its potential in this body, though. Right?
in the next body. The avoid of this body of Shimon Bar Yochai is over.
Right.
So so what's a Gilgal? This now the soul comes back and has to do with another body, and that other body has to get elevated.
I thought I thought you come back if you didn't actualize your
There's
avodah.
two ways of Gilgal. There's a Gilgal that's a not good Gilgal. You familiar with the not Gilgal? Good? Not Gid.
Not Gilgal,
God-
Gilgal.
Gilgal good.
Not good Gilgal.
Right, exactly. Right.
Right.
That's
The opposite of good
well,
Gilgal.
that's when you come back. When you come back entrapped in an arrow,
Oh.
and the nefesh elokis remains in pain because it can't do the.
What if you're an animal and you come back as a human?
I haven't learned anything about Gilgulim or what.
Could you identify
I'm
some
actually
people
a
like
puppy.
that?
I'm actually a puppy who's very happy to see
Okay.
everyone.
So when his soul went up and
I
was
think
and was brought right, even if it comes back in a Gilgal, also avoid the avoid of the previous body, that's over with.
Right.
But this new body is another story. Okay, so
Okay.
because of this, back to our point, that all the avoid of a person is nostalgic. Nostalgic, by the way, also has the word nostalgic. You familiar with that expression?
What?
That nostalgic. Nistalek Yekoru the Kuchibrichu Bukova Omen.
That
Hashem
the
is
presence,
hidden in
the
the
Shekhinah
world?
of Hashem, like left all of the worlds.
No.
All of the world.
Nistalek.
Is
It,
hidden.
it goes up and it bursts forth.
Ah.
Burst forth is another word for nistalek. Histalokus, it goes up, and the same word nistalek. Nistalek Yekoru the Kuchibrichu, there gets exploded.
Uh-huh.
The glory of God,
Into the
Kulhu
world.
Olmen, in all worlds, right?
Hmm.
So this up, which is a departure. I mean, think about this. Deborah used the very operative word about the tzimtzum. It's a helm, right?
It's a
It's
what?
a helm, a concealment,
It's concealment.
right? But at
That's
the
the
same
sound.
time, what happens? He injects an even deeper level, a level that's so deep that it's concealed. He injects that into all of reality. The hashpoah, the flow from before the tzimtzum, crosses the tzimtzum in what's called the kav. For any of you, have learned. I'm sure some of you have learned enough Chassidus to know this. That there's from the allness creates a dot, even less than a dot, and that dot, that's the symbolic. That symbolism of that is that Hashem is withdrawing deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper into Himself, and from that deep, deep, deep place, He starts to create this point, and from this point, He exudes a line, which goes across the tzimtzum, and that's ultimately responsible for all the worlds. So the ultimate, the depth of Hashem now starts to pass through down here below until, is it Sefer Yetzirah, or I'll say the quote, you guys will tell me which one it is. Noistich Ilosim B'Soifa.
Oh, it's in the Gemara.
No,
Oh, it's in the Zohar.
that's Zohar. I'm pretty sure it's Zohar. That Noistich Ilosim B'Soifa, the beginning
It's wedged.
is wedged in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the very, very beginning that he withdrew himself into. So now, wait a minute, we get a little optimistic here about Histalkus, right? There's some positive thing going on here, right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's soul is going up. He's dying. His soul is going up. And that's going to create a very big burst forth of energy from the tzaddik, as also the Zohar says, quoted in Tanya, that when a tzaddik passes away, he is more present in this world than he was when he was physically in the body.
That's in Tanya?
Well, he quotes it in Tanya.
From where? The Zohar? Gemara?
I'm not sure. Again, I think it's Zohar, but I'm not sure. So don't believe me. But
At least you can do more work in this body.
he can do more work out of body than he can do in body. Why?
There you
Because the body is very limited, right? Now you can't do more work out of body if you just remain up here. But if you're nistalic up, and then nistalek, that bursts forth the glory of God in all the worlds, then because you're not limited by the body, so that, I mean, people use and understand this today very simply in Lubavitch. The exponential growth of Chabad houses since Gimel Tammuz is unbelievable.
But it even says, but even in Parshas Vayechi, Rashi says on Yaakov Avinu, it says tzaddikim b'misusam kriyim chayim. That anyway, when a tzaddik passes away, they're more alive
They're more alive.
than they were when they were in their body.
Right.
Like
Okay.
it's the you can ask the question like how does Chabad continue to grow year after year? Like the Rebbe's not like physically here to like tell people like go on shlichus. You know what I'm saying? Like
Well,
I saw charts and I saw a chart. It was probably around the Kenneth time or whatever, and it was definitely from Chabad headquarters. You know what I'm saying? It's like their data.
Yeah, but it isn't from the genius of some CEO down here, it says. It's
Whatever.
from
I'm
this.
just saying, if you look at the charts, like they say, like the number of shluchim that were there before Gimel Tammuz and after Gimel Tammuz is just exponential.
It's inarray. It's incalculable.
And it keeps going. It's
Yeah.
not like all of a sudden Gimel Tammuz happens and all the Chabad houses are
Right.
shut down and cut off. No, there's more. You know.
So lest everybody think this is just a Lubavitcher thing, it's not.
Just saying.
We're talking about Shimon Bar Yochai, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, but he's a tzaddik ador. He's
Tzaddik,
the
right.
Nasi ador, as the Rebbe is in our generation. Where are you going? It's time
I'm
to
making
read.
I'm sorry, I need a coffee.
She's making a coffee. Who's going to take on? Because we're right in the middle of the sentence.
I didn't realize we were ready to continue on.
Okay. Someone else wants. I'll take it over. I'll take it over until you come back.
Okay, thanks.
B'siva zeh, as a result of this, that the departure of the energy of the tzaddik is all gathered up above. and goes back to its, or goes up to very deep levels. Yesh Yisrael lemistalkus al panei avoda. There's an advantage of the day of his departure is in regards to his avoda shebemesha, in relation to the avoda that he did kol yimei hachayim, all the days of his life. The influence that he can have after death is broader. Ki oz niskalalus umisragazos kol havoda kulam. So all the avoda is gathered together and aggregated, like in a ball of energy that can explode downward. In addition to that, kol havoda kulam, when all of that avoda is gathered together, nizvasef v'nisrachzos kol havoda kulam. Oh, excuse me, wrong paragraph. Nizvasef or ha'oila al kulam. There is created an additional light which is greater than the light that existed before. And what he does here in this next thing, he speaks about dugma, an example of this, an example where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The sum of the parts being the avoda that the tzaddik did in his lifetime, the whole being the all-inclusiveness when all of it's gathered together. So he gives a mushal. Kishem. Last paragraph on the page.
Kashem shekasher mitztarfus lemashal ICS misefer shekal achas. Okay, mitztarfus is like when you said a connection, right?
Gather together.
Kashem or kisham?
Kashem.
Kashem. Okay, what does that mean? Kashem.
Just
the name.
like.
Just like when it's connected in the, like it says in the mashal, the letters in a book. Shakol achas or achas? Achas mehen lekasha'atzma yesh la muvan miyuchad.
Each word in the book, right, and each letter in the word, each word in the book has a meaning for itself.
Right. V'naitzares teva shlema.
And when you put the letters together, for instance, the letter Aleph has a meaning. First of all, the word is aluf. Aluf. The aluf Shaloi, that means master.
We said this in the Mimer of Torah, where we're saying the same thing, right?
Right.
In Torah, the one that you were learning before.
We did learn it before. I don't remember which Mimer, but yes, we've learned it before. This brought a lot. So the letter Beis has a meaning. Beis is the word house, bias, right? But their individual meanings are totally expanded, or they take on a totally different meaning when they're put together. Aleph and Beis now are fathers. Right? So you have the Aleph in the house, the master living in the house. These are metaphors, and these are things that are said, absolutely. But the point being that the letters take on different meaning when they're put together than when they're separate.
הרי על ידי זה במובן חדש לגמרי הנאיבה לצירוף ה-ACS. And from this we will understand like
the Chiddush. The complete Chiddush that comes when letters flow together and the letters come together.
שהוא תוכן הטבע המלא, האר העילה על כולנה.
So the word is a semantic now that's way above the individual meaning of each and every letter.
Meaning a concept is boiled down into a word, but the word itself holds that concept, but the concept is greater than the word itself.
I mean, that's true what you're saying.
Is that
that's not what he's saying.
Okay.
The word on the letters on themselves, taken separately, don't imply a concept.
Oh, okay.
In fact, they can be mixed up any other way.
Correct.
But when they do come together in a certain order,
create a word.
Then they create a concept. They create something that has a semantic that they didn't have on their own.
Right.
So he's using this as a mashal for all of the incremental avoda that Shimon Bar Yochai does in his lifetime, or that Tzaddik or any of us do in our lifetime.
Right.
When it all comes together
on the day of his Stalkos.
On the day of his Stalkos,
like
it creates a meaning that didn't exist before.
Oh, that's cool.
That's what he's saying. So now we have it. So you were already getting a little different attitude toward death.
Oh.
No,
Well, I mean,
I
this is
don't know.
death. This is death of a tzaddik.
Well, Amcha Kulam Tzadikim.
Okay.
Amcha Kulam
Thank you, Rabbi
Tzadikim.
K.
Every Jew has a spark of tzaddik within him. So let's continue.
כשם שבשעה שמצטרפים 10 מבני ישראל.
Just like when you add together 10 people, 10 Jews.
Okay. שכל אחד מהם יש לו נפש אלוקis. Every one of them has a נפש אלוקis. מייצר משהו חדש. משהו חדש, right. השרס השכינה הבאה על 10 מישראל. Well, we know that when there's 10 people, the Shekhinah dwells among them.
So a whole new thing is created. Something that couldn't have existed before with each of them. 10 makes a new thing.
But not a new thing. It's the Shekhinah is not new. It's
No.
just
Shechina wasn't there
The
before.
Shekhinah
Oh, saying
didn't
wasn't there
rest
before.
Yeah. There's
And
no
this
Hashrat
combination of
Shekhinah.
people, this place at this time, I think it's different.
Yeah.
right.
Dude, the Alf's really short. Can I say you the Alf?
Sure.
Yay. Okay. Feet.
Wait. Can I nominate
Just-
you?
You've been
I'm
selected.
basking the nomination.
Okay.
I just wanted, since we interrupted, I'm looking at the comments here. Someone says on despair, because it's back at the beginning, we read that piece from the Frierdiker Rebbe. He says, I still feel so conflicted after hearing the news about the tragedy in Iran. I don't know, and then he doesn't end the sentence. And you probably weren't here, Oliver, at the beginning. That's why we're learning this. Because I felt the same way, and Jews feel the same way when I'm not involved in the stuff that we're doing right now. Despair, right?
Right.
Conflicted. So we have to find some way. Despair, the Frierdiker Rebbe has told us in that little mimer that I read from the Frierdiker Rebbe, very interesting language. The poison on the tip of the sword which kills the, right? But conflict is not necessarily something bad. A person, the resolution of conflict, the resolution of tension is something that you deal with, like all the. Esther happens to play guitar.
I just happen to.
It worked. No, I'm just using that as an example. If
Yeah.
it worked for the tension in the
Or the
string,
strings,
there would
yeah.
be no music, right?
Right.
If it weren't for the struggle of trying to solve an issue, there would be no progress. So, it's not a bad thing that we have a state of conflict. The question is, back to Tikun Olom, how do we masakin it? How do we resolve it? How to resolve the chord? How to resolve the problem? How do we resolve the enigma of life itself? Yes.
There's actually a lot of there's a certain satisfaction when you have a resolve to a conflict
Yeah.
that you wouldn't have had there not been a conflict. So
Absolutely.
It could either go either which way, but the goal is that you end up at a better place than you were before the conflict.
right.
When you think about when you go, if you're lifting weights or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deeper meaning when
Meaning.
10 Jews come together, the Shekinah comes down?
What?
So what's the deeper meaning behind that? When 10 Jews come together, the
The
Shekinah
deeper meaning
Because
is
if you every Jew, that's the way you see God is by looking at your Jew, another person next to you.
I'm not sure. What's your question?
No, I'm saying if you want to see godliness, look at another Jew next to you.
Yeah, but if you want to see godliness, you can look at yourself too, because we all have a nefesh elokis.
Right.
The point of this is to say that in a chabura, there's a power that doesn't exist in an individual, and that's basically. There's a very interesting. I want to just share with you. I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a point that was made in someone was giving a talk, and he made this point. In Parshas Shmini is where Nadav and Avihu come up and offer their bad stuff.
The place in Nefesh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no, that's Okay.
Yeah.
Das and Avihu. And but Das and Avihu, they each. This was the argument, and they each brought up their fire pan. Now remember, you get the scene here. This is in Shmini, the 8th day. The base of the Mishkan is being turned over to Aaron and his son. This is a dedication. I mean, it's a celebration, basically. It's a celebration of the turning over. And this is going to be to your point about what's the deal about getting together with people, and what's the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to make it short, Nadav and Avihu bring their fire pans, v'yamusu, and they die. So suddenly the celebration is turned into a funeral, right? Very much like what happened this year at Meron, and what happened in the wedding that Devorah told us about earlier.
What?
That there's something, a tragedy at a wedding.
That was in Baltimore. The Baltimore
Yeah.
shooting.
He came in.
So
Oh, yeah.
suddenly the tables
Oh.
are turned, right? And what's the reaction? Now this is a very interesting thing. V'yemen Moshe el Aaron. Moshe said to Aaron, this is what Hashem said when he sanctified the people. V'yidam Aaron, and Aaron was silent.
He was silent, right?
Aaron had nothing to say. Like, what can you say? V'yikra Moshe, he called out to the people, Mishol el Sofan, and he said, Elakim korvu. So Hashem is in our midst. V'yikrabu, and we should gather together and do something. So Aaron's reaction was silence. I mean, appropriately, bigger than what you can say. And Moshe's action was, let's get together. Let's do something about this. So Kirov, that's the word here in the pasuk. Kirov, coming close together.
Why can't we be silently together?
We could be silently together. We could have the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
Right, absolutely.
Mhm.
But that's a resolution of the tension. It's that we're in this together. It isn't just happening to those 50, 45 people. It's so interesting for those of us, so you who are into
45 is Hashem's name,
gematria.
Koach Ma.
Yeah, correct. It's a Shema.
Yeah.
And Shema, what is Shema? All you guys who are so advanced in Chassidus?
Actually, chesed.
No.
No?
No.
I think it's a.
Ayin Bez is Chassid.
Oh.
Ayin Bez is Chachma, actually, excuse me. Shema
45
is
45 is Ma.
Right.
45 is Ma.
I mean, that's what we ask when
people.
something like this happens.
Ma.
Ma'ani.
What
But
is
what
it?
happened?
What is it? It's bittul.
Bit-
Oh.
It's bittul. Shema is bittul. Complete
You
like
don't have to groan.
it's beyond me. But that beyond me is if you can take it in two ways. Like, man, it's just like, look at all the death. Look at all that death. Yeah, I don't understand it.
We
No,
don't.
we don't. There's nothing to understand. Because it's beyond understanding. And beyond understanding can be wondrous. It's a pella. It's just, we thought we knew God, we thought we studied Chassidus, and we know what, we know what Simpson is, we know what Acharat Simpson is, we know how it all works together. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, after explaining in these same chapters where he's explaining the Simpson, it's impossible to explain this in writing.
Mm.
Right? And I have a guy in the class who says, so what are we learning all this? It's impossible to explain. He's writing page
It's a
after
good
page
question.
of what's impossible to put in
It's a
writing.
legitimate question.
Right? Because it's impossible, it's a pella. It's beyond us. And that beyond us can be experienced as wonder, awe.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Oh.
Okay, and that's what Moshe said. Yeah, you can be quiet and and quiet is appropriate. Or it's both, you could get into action and do something. If he's being gathered together upstairs, Shimon Bar Yochai, let's gather ourselves together downstairs and act as chaverim, right? He was, remember, the Zohar's written part of it anyway in terms of chaverim, pairs, right? And he's, what's the word? He is anointed in a higher way than his friends. That's the pasuk in Tillim. He's anointed, but in a higher way than his friend. But he's part of a chabor, and that chabor. All the people in the Zohar are called the chaverim, and that is an antidote to despair. That's a way of making tikun. Who's up the stairs rolling? It doesn't matter.
They just
Close
had a
to
baby,
Shimon
so
Fine.
I can't even say anything.
All right, so
They
fine.
just had a baby.
It's weird. I'm getting
Like
10% of my battery.
Newborn.
I may fade out here
I know.
except for the table. Okay, so where are we? There's besides the fact that it's appropriate to be silent, and it's also appropriate to get into action.
Yes.
I mean, I'll tell you, I really had moments when I wondered whether I could be up to doing this class, coming here. It was really weird. I had moments when this morning, this woman in the shir told me about this young man who has just started his track on Shuva at a wedding. He walked out of the wedding and was shot dead. by a random killer or maybe an anti-Semite, I mean, everybody in this class just broke into tears. And every time I thought about it all day long, I would just start crying. So, tears are also Milam Atambadas, right?
I just feel like we just keep getting one hit
Hit
after the
after
other.
another.
This year has just been like non-stop. It's like,
Yep. So Moshe says the antidote. Moshe says, we're getting hit. Come together. Come together.
Yeah, but with 45
Beautiful.
lives later, it's like,
Come together and do what we need to do together.
they were together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Do you know, like,
That's
that
an
is like the
interesting
epitome of
point.
Achdus right there. Like,
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
you think people weren't together? You
The
think
thing
people
is,
were
that's
arguing?
that's the irony though. It's what them being together actually caused those 45 people to die. So I don't know.
The trampoline.
We need to learn more.
Let's
Talk
go
about-
further. Let's
yeah.
go further. All right.
Yeah.
Hanan, you were starting?
Lefiza Yom Inyanish Yom Lag B'Omer. And with this, we'll understand the concept of Lag B'Omer. Yom Yisfalkus
Just
Shal
picking
Rashbi.
him up.
Yom
I'm just trying to speak loud.
You
I'm
get
just
the
gonna.
mic.
We can't do it all the way because then he's gonna explain. So just
Yom Yisfalkus Shal Rashbi, the day of the passing of Reb Shem Bar Yochai. Shekain Kechol Shahis Gdela Archa Shel Avedis Rashbi B'Chayav.
So just as his avoida during his life was enorek, incomparable to what other people are doing.
Gdela Archa Shel Avedis Rashbi B'Chayav.
Kibituya, as he himself uttered. He said,
Kitri is Katarna.
with,
Chat Katira is Katarna. It's Aramaic.
with one knot I am tied to you, he said to God.
Bia Achida Bia Lehita. The Kasher Achad Isi Hineni Miskasher. Acho Izbay Loid Bay.
So he just translated. Shimbai on his bed, as he's passing, he says, what I'm experiencing, what's happening here, I'm tied to you. Like there's no separation between you and me.
To him and Hashem.
Yeah.
Hari Archa Shel Mashim Neitzer Bia Mistalkos Hugadol Yisr. So then obviously also what becomes created and what shines out on the day of his passing is also like Be'ein Arech to what would be
In his
for the
normal
stalkos
life.
of his normal life.
Yeah.
Keteitza min hasikum shal avedas va'ar ha'oila al kulana.
When a person concludes his avoida, and the light, and this is the avoida is all the each letter, each day, but they all come together. The oila al kulano, and the composite, just like back in our mushal, the word of many letters is totally out of the realm of each individual letters. So the coming together of everything at the end of his life was ein orech to all the other individual accomplishments that he made.
Okay. Should I continue?
Yeah, finish the
זה
paragraph.
גם מובן של הנאמר לגבי משה רבנו. We will understand this also based on what's said concerning Moshe Rabbeinu. 50 שערי בינה נברא בעולם וכולנו ניתנו למשה חסר אחד. There's 50 שערי בינה that were created in the world, and all of them were given to Moshe shy of one. ורק בש"ס הסתלקוסי זכה גם לשער הנון. And only in the time of his passing was he zeicha to receive the fifth gate,
50.
the 50th gate of Bina.
Har Navoy.
Har Novai.
That's where he passed away.
Oh,
And that's,
Oh, he
this,
passed
and
away
look,
on
you
Har
see
Navoy?
that? See how cute that is?
that's
Har
really
Navoy, Nun.
cute. Yeah, it's cute.
Very cute.
Hard
All right,
stress.
so we don't have to say it. He said it quite well already
Said enough said.
about what death is, the culmination and the unification. Who's going to say the next one?
wants to read.
Anybody?
It's very
Good
nice.
guys.
Sure.
No pressure.
I will do it. I will stand up for the community.
You're saying
I just want to warn all you guys out in Facebook land.
I
I
will
have
sit for the
5% battery.
on behalf of the
I
community.
don't know why, but
I
you're
will
probably
sit.
going to get cut off.
Oh wow.
Huh?
Do I have a charger?
You have a charger?
It's not gonna reach all the way
With
where I
beeping.
need to be.
iPad.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
Okay.
Keep going.
Let me figure this
Uh,
out.
Kach Yuvan.
Kach Yuvan Hanemar b'medrash al hapasuk. So it says. So we understand what's said in the midrash on this pasuk. Kilo yarinu ha'adam v'chai shafilu chayos.
This is the pasuk. The
Okay.
pasuk says a person cannot see me, verani, a person cannot
live.
see me and live. God says.
Shafilu chiyus hakadosh einan ro'os.
Even the holy animals, the angels, they don't see God.
Okay. Ki hein nimtzais tachas harakia.
The neshamas are under the
Under the rakia. They stand. They are like stationed, located under the rakia.
They stand underneath the firmament, right? Does this make sense? Everybody, you get this?
Firmament.
The rakia. There are Chevra Ahavas, 7 layers of condensation, seven layers of
sky
stratification,
stratification.
right? As he said that, in the beginning, the second minor, the hirakia, that's the beginning of it.
Right.
And they don't have a direct view of God, even the angels.
Okay.
They don't see. They're under the rakia.
Wait, what? The angels?
The angels,
They're above it.
they're below it.
They're below
They're
it.
below it. The rakia is the first separation, right?
Okay.
Second day of creation. First day of creation, the or light. Now, what was this light? This is the light that was the light after the Simpson. If you're looking at, there are many different ways of looking at it that Chassidus looks at it. It's the light that when he first started thinking about creation, in other words,
Okay.
before that, he had no consciousness of creation, and it rose up in his consciousness as one of the top bereshis for Chachma.
Chachma.
It rose up in his own Chachma, right? But the way that often we take it is that when he started to roll out the creation, he did it with speech. Chachma is very deep. Speech is an externalization of what originated in the Chachma, right? So he did it with speech. And what was the first mimer? The Hior. So that light is already a light that's very removed from his essence, the way we're understanding it right now.
Because he spoke
Right?
it.
Because he spoke it. And the very second thing he said was the hirakia, that there be divisions. So the light comes out small, essence in a kav, in a line, and in addition to that, it gets obscured by layers and layers of condensation, which we call rakiyas. And the angels exist under that. They're just creations.
Okay.
So,
So,
achakach,
Achakach Nemar,
afterwards it was said,
the Medrash, is that right?
in the Midrash, right?
Okay, the Medrash, Lagabe Tzadikim, B'chayehem Einam Roim, Aval B'mei Sasim,
The Misosam Rayim.
Roim.
Angels never see God himself or anywhere near that. Tzaddikim, the Midrash says, they don't see God in their life, but they do see God in their death.
Oh.
And remember,
With regards to in the Medrash, with regards to tzaddikim, the living can't see, but the deaf are able to see.
Tzaddikim, which is us, Amchakulim Tzaddikim, or Tzaddikim like the Rebbe, like Shimon Bar Yochai, etc., etc. They don't see because we have the pasuk. Lo yoreni adam v'chai. A person cannot see me and live. That's what he's explaining here. A person cannot see me when he's in life, but when a person is in a state of misa, he does come close, and
There
that's
goes the computer.
No, serious?
Yep.
Oh well.
oh. the
Bon
computer
Amshicho.
ran.
Hey.
Oh, good.
I tried.
It was only nostalgia.
Can you get it
That's
back?
what it was.
Sorry,
Wait,
you guys
saw
here.
everything
You
and
guys
everything
are
just
seeing,
one
but
day right here.
the rest of the world is not seeing.
Hold on.
Hold on. You can do it. You can do it.
I'm trying.
You can do it.
No, now it's either the computer or this. You know what? Actually, this might work. Who's
And I
there?
can use this also.
Oh, wait, is it charging?
It's hard to know.
What is going on with our
It
stuff
should be,
tonight?
should be.
Everything tonight is like a little bit
You're
chaotic.
plugged in, right?
Our
You're
IT
plugged in,
guy
but I don't know if this charger
took
works,
off
so-
the internet. So please excuse
It
our
doesn't give me the,
difficulties.
It's not working, right?
It doesn't give me the light.
Well,
The
is it not
laptop's
plugged
still
in
out.
yet?
Laptop's still out.
Hi guys, we can give, actually we'll show everybody the party.
What's going on?
Levi, you're on your camera.
Oh.
Go Oh, battery. This is
Oh, boy. Everybody, we're trying.
Should we keep going?
Nostalgic soon.
Should we keep going to keep the
Keep
momentum?
going, keep going.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
L'gabe tzadikim b'chayeihem,
Where are
einam
you?
roim aval b'meisam rei. Okay, v'nishalas
Where are
hashala,
you?
and then we asked the shiloh, we asked the question. Me'acha she'af chayos haka-
Wait a minute, see the bracket
Okay.
there at the end of that, Ryan? You're gonna go now to
What are you
Yud Gimel.
talking about?
No, I didn't put a bracket in yours. Go to Yud Gimel, that's the next place.
Go straight to your gimel?
Yeah,
Okay.
go to.
Kach yuvan gam hamasupar
I'm a super,
b'kisvei
that which is written in the Kisvei Arizal.
Spill on
Yeah.
aisle 2. Spill
I'm trying
on
to
aisle
fix
2.
it.
You know, when there's a lot of kedusha, there's
Thank you.
klipa, so like the
Seriously.
technology is gonna be in the way.
How about
We should get
now?
everybody here at the table. I don't see, look, I don't see it, but
It
look.
might be
Can't access
charging.
the feed.
Unplug it,
Can't
unplug
access
it for
the
a
feed.
Okay.
If you click it a
See
few
the green-
times,
see the green
it'll
before? It's
actually
not doing
decide
it.
to work.
What is that supposed to
That's
do?
why you don't do IT.
We take a look.
Yeah, take a look.
Yeah, it's charging. It's
It's
charging.
charging.
It is?
Yeah.
Good,
Let me see
good.
if I can restore.
Okay,
Go right
fine,
back.
a little bit interrupted.
Oh, let it go. Okay, there we go.
Who's left?
Really? It just picked up.
Sorry for the, we're waiting for the other computer to come up again.
Knew you should want to say
It's
feedback.
frozen. I'm sorry.
How dare we?
Josh.
Is it going?
Dafka doesn't do IT.
Okay.
Josh is like, if you want me to bring up a table with you, I could.
You know why this happened? Someone forgot sushi.
Wow, wow, wow.
Just saying.
I see the direct connection.
I know.
I see it clearly.
I know.
Sushi is gematria wires.
Sushi, yes, it's gematria
How
histalkos
do I redo
of an
it?
apple.
Sushi. I wonder what the gematria sushi actually is.
Shin
Sushi.
Depends on.
It's not going.
samach
Yeah, I'm gonna refresh it.
samach vav shin yud. Right?
I actually spell it with two vowels because it's sushi.
Sushi.
I
Because
think if I need, I could also add an extra yud at the end.
yeah, hit done maybe.
Hashem loves you.
You can continue.
Okay,
Just keep
okay,
going,
okay,
I'll-
okay, okay.
Okay,
I'll figure it
Kach
out.
gam super bekis verizal. This is we understand gam also in the
A story.
stories of the writings of the Arizal.
I'm a super, a story that's being told.
Oh,
There's a story we're about to start that's written in the Kisvei of the Rizal
okay.
concerning
Al Rav Avram Alevi Shahaya Oimer B'chol Yoim Es Tevilas
Nachem.
Nachem.
He would say the tefillah of Nachem every day. You know
Okay.
what Nachem is?
Nope, I don't know.
Nachem is the
on-
prayer
on-
we say on Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av.
Before my-
He would say the prayer on Tisha B'Av every single day.
Dang.
Why?
Okay, Mishum Shehatz Hatshit
Star.
Shahatsit Star.
Shahit Star.
Shahid Star, the pain, al Chorban Beis Hamikdash, because of every
Can you
it's
see
the
that? Can you read?
the pain of the destruction of the holy temple. Vaya mitzafe levaninu bimheira.
He would wait.
And-
Meet spell.
And he would wait and hope, Saf is hope, for its rebuilding. For its rebuilding speedily.
Okay.
Really, real gaze he would.
Kasha'amar tfilas nachum gam b'la'ag ba'im miron piga boy kafi dasai shal Rashbi.
So at the time when he went on Lag Baimer to the kever of the Rashba, of the
What's
Shinabay
Piga?
Rai, he felt a kapeda.
Hakpada.
Kapod is poga be kapedosoi. So he felt the anger of Rashbi.
He what? He
He
felt,
felt the anger.
The anger of Rashbi that
Yeah,
he said
that,
nothing by his
that he's saying Nachem on Lag Baimer for the destruction of the temple.
Okay.
He said, this is not a day for that.
Yeah.
Moving,
We use bar.
V'yuz bar hadavar al pi hamova muva mishmoi shel Rabbeinu Hazaken nishmas eden ki yishnan nishamai shel yachidi segula shlagabi didam enam kayemas Okay, tell me when to stop.
All right,
Keep
guys.
going. I don't know what the
You're
grammar
supposed to
is.
know. You're supposed to take-
Hasaitzas, Haruchanios, Hashlilios Shel Korban Abayis, V'acher Male Hu Rashbi. Okay, translate.
Okay.
There are some
The-
kind of neshamas that the Lagabi Dinan Ina Kayamas.
Who's starting from?
There are certain kinds of neshamas, right? The Alter Rebbe writes. There are neshamas, special kinds of Yechidus Segula, very special kinds of souls. That in relation to them, with Megdidam, the whole Beis HaMikdash destruction doesn't take a place.
Wow.
Shlilis?
Huh?
Shlilios?
Hashlilus
What's
Shalchum
Shlilios?
They
Doesn't
completely
exist.
negate.
Negate.
Their whole spirit completely negates.
Okay,
Do you remember the story of Rabbi Akiva seeing the Beis HaMikdash in flames?
And he laughed.
And he laughed.
Because he said that he laughed because he said he knew that it would be rebuilt. He knew that
He
the
knew it would be
prophecy was
rebuilt.
happening.
He knew that this destruction was
Temporary.
part of the
Right.
necessity of the building of something even greater.
Wow.
So, and that's what he see. That's where he lived. So Shimon Bar Yochai also, he was a student, of Rabbi Akiva, and he had that same perspective.
Right.
That he lived in his consciousness, the Beis HaMikdash is not gone. There were special people like that, and one of them, the paragraph in Echad Me'ela, is the Rashbi.
Oh wow. Okay, that's
And
what
one
he's
of them
saying.
is the Mashbi.
Mila whoever. Okay, move on. Im Kain.
So it's understood. If so,
Okay. Shebahagia Yom Lag BaOmer Boy Hatar Chuzai
Tachozoi.
Tarchazai Kol Avodas Rashbi.
So it comes out that Lag BaOmer is aggregated, brought together, concentrated,
all the
avoided
is
of
it like,
Rashbi,
like all the merits. Does that have to do with merit? Kol
all
Kol
is
Avodas.
avoided.
Everything, all his work comes to
All his
fruition
work
on
comes
that day.
together, yeah.
I learned something like this in
Wow,
seminary.
put
Okay.
it back together.
By Saifas Ha'ar Ha'ila Al Kulana.
Again, like the
And this-
like the adding of light which rises above all of them, like the word that's greater than any individual letter.
Right.
So all of the life, all the individuation
Comes
of
together
the life,
on that
came
day.
all together and burst forth.
Right. Loihaya Al Rav Avram Alevi Lahargish Es HaChorban L'Gamrei.
So it wasn't proper. And in fact, when he experienced this Rav Avram, who said Nachum every day, so at that moment on Rashbi, in Rashbi's Yom Hilula, he didn't feel the Chorban completely at all. The Yesei,
B'yosei, what do you want to say?
Saying he didn't feel it because by the Rashbi there was no concept of, by him himself,
Chorban.
by Avram there was a concept of Chorban.
Yes. right,
Daily.
right.
And Rashi would be offended. He said, "What are you bringing your Chorban into my
Leave
non-Chorban?"
your home.
You know,
Leave your Chorban at home.
Right.
leave your Chorban at home.
Leave
I'm
your
Rashbi.
Chorban.
I'm on a different madrega. No.
Exactly, right.
Okay. B'yosei Talmud Harizal Uviadio
Since he was a Talmud of the Arizal,
Uviadia
Ubiyadou,
Uvidau Es Erech Yom Hastalkus
and he knew,
Siyum Havoida Es
the level of this day of
Hashiboisai
stuff.
Hamiyuchedes Shel Rashbi.
Yeah.
So he
At
was.
that moment,
He realized that the Rashbi was the Talmud of the Arizal. Oh, sorry.
Who Rav Avram
Rav
Alevi?
Avram Alevi
Who
was
was
a
the
Talmud of
Well, sorry,
the Arizal.
that was so that's why
And
he
since
realized.
so he had the whole tradition right in him, and so when he stood there in front of the Chevra Rashbi, he absorbed the perspective of the Rashbi for that moment.
Yeah, well, but to some degree, he was outside of that because he was in the whole Chorban mindset.
So he would say hard to say it's like us, but he's living the paradox. He's both sides now, right? On the one hand, he's saying Nachum every day. That's his norm. But for a moment, he was lifted to a place where he could see past that norm. And he could see that the very destruction that he mourns is, like Rabbi Akiva said, the beginning of a rebuilding
So he's
in a necessary way that we have no hasaga in whatsoever.
Right.
Why it has to be that way, but so it is.
So he's living in Gula.
He's living Gula. That's what we call Gula. Absolutely right. The state of mourning and the state of, being all tied up in a knot,
45
crying is a state of Golas. It's despair.
That's 45 also, right?
Despair, huh?
Yush.
45 Metro Gula.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. 45.
So one second, wait. I'm trying to understand.
Geula. Lamed Vav Hey Aleph. So it's Lamed is 30, Vav is 36, Hey is 41. What am I missing?
Gimel.
Gimel is 34. I'm getting 34.
Aleph, you missed the Aleph in there.
Geula.
Geula.
45. Exactly.
There you go.
No.
It's telling the truth.
I'm trying to understand. So
What?
Rabbi Avi, what?
Good call.
Right.
Rabbi Alevi, he had this whole like. So, but when he went to Rashbi, he still said it, and Rashbi was upset with
Yeah,
him.
that's
He
so.
felt that the Rashi was upset with him.
With the seven. This is not a place for this. Is not.
And then so- and
when
then-
it's like if you come to this place, there's no place here for.
For
All
that.
the time for sorrow.
But he did it. But he did it anyway.
No. Afterwards, he felt it. Then he stopped. Then if he would
Stop.
go back, he would stop.
Oh.
He did it once, felt it. He was like, "Yo, man, chill out. I'm cool. I won't do it
Right.
no more. Ain't no do it." And then he dropped the Nachim thing, and that was
I
it.
dropped it now.
Okay, got it. Shkoy.
But after that, he continued on his own when he wasn't around him, because he still.
So what he
felt
did
the pain.
afterwards, we don't.
We don't
That's
know.
not mentioned in the story.
Maybe Rashbi affected him that much that he became unsnug and then became chassid.
He did the
There's a
tshuva.
Okay, your dollar. Who's got it? Anybody?
Rabbi
You wanna read?
Kesselman. Oh, go ahead.
You don't have to. You want to? You don't.
Ocean Parkway or Crown Street?
Call it later.
Or
It's up to
close
you,
to
Joe.
his.
Or which Josh?
Gimel.
You got?
I'm Josh.
Go for it.
All right.
Levi.
Josh.
Levi
All
Halevi.
right. Kaka Yuvan Gam
No, you dollar. Tam
you
Hadavar.
don't. Okay.
Yeah, but that's not where the bracket is.
Tam Hadavar.
The next one is the end bracket. First of all.
Uh,
Tam Hadavar. The reason for the thing is
Avodas HaRashbi Haisa LeHemshech LeHasharas
Hashras.
Hashras Esa Panimia Satora Sasim de Araisa.
So the whole reason for this is what is this that's so great that we're talking about? That this avoida of pure light, avoida of pure light. So what the Rebbe wants to bring out here, this a lifestyle of Shimon Bar Yochai is a creation of light. He creates light. He is light. He's fire himself. Like with his eyes, he's fire. It's not about him. As we said, ma. It's totally about the other. It's all about the hamshif, to bring down the light down here below. Not to have the selfish experience of the light, but to bring it down.
Just like a reflection.
Wouldn't call it a reflection. It's a let's talk about like enlightenment. We'll use that. Instead, the normal, an average way of looking at enlightenment. I want to be enlightened.
Yeah.
It's about me. I want to get to a higher plane. The enlightenment of the Rashbi and the enlightenment of a tzaddik in general. Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Tzaddik is the foundation of the world. The tzaddik's whole raison d'etre, reason for being lit up, is not to experience the ecstasy of being lit up, but to bring light down into the world. Lahamsha.
Right.
That's what it says. The Tamadava, the reason of this whole light experience is to bring down the Panemius Torah down here below. Begalia, to bring the innermost dimensions of Torah into the revealed parts of Torah. Or to put it more, in terms of broader life experience, to bring the innermost dimensions of godliness into the average daily experiences
My nukfin and
of
my
everyday
nakfin.
life. Huh?
My nukfin and my nakfin. When the feminine waters and masculine waters come together. Just,
Yeah, it is. My duffin, my nothing, absolutely. But usually we're talking about here the raising. Usually we're talking about my nukfin. We're talking about raising the waters up causes a condensation down. Here we're saying the world down here as it is. The whole purpose of tzaddikim is to mamshich down below. Go ahead, keep going.
Begalia Shebetorah Uva Emsosa Begalia Shel HaOlam.
Well, that's what he says. Not only does the tzaddik draw
Galia,
down
is it
light
Galia?
into the inner light of the
Galia,
Pneumis
yeah.
Torah
Galia.
into the revealed part of the Torah, but in doing so, he actually draws the revelation down into the world. Not the Galia of the Torah and the Galia of the Olam.
Galia's revelation.
Revelation. Yeah.
Okay.
Hayu Omnam Tanyim, Tanaim, Sako, Bepinimius HaTorah.
So these are the Tanoim, the people of the Mishnah,
That work in
who
their
work and make their business. I say this also Tanya. Isaac, that's what Rabbi said. What's Isaac meaning?
to work.
To
To
delve.
work. He says a businessman, usually a business person, carries the business a lot in their head when you're even not at work. You're thinking about the business.
Asic potato.
So that's Isaac in Torah.
Ach miyuchad berashbi.
Now, when it comes particularly to the Rashbi, it's like this.
Hamasechta
Hamshachasa.
Hamshachasa bebechinas giloi be'olam.
He actually brought it down into the world. Remember, he kept out of the cave and lit the field on
Well,
fire.
that took a little
Then
bit
he
of
went back in.
Then he
convincing.
went back in. But in other words, his light,
Just
which
higher.
we're not just speaking metaphorically,
Right.
he actually could influence the world, like many tzaddikim have and many Kabbalists have as well. Influence actual changes in the world through drawing down the inner dimensions of
Influencer.
godly wisdom.
Ooh. Ooh.
They were the real influencers.
Yeah.
How many
The
followers?
cave in,
Was it a higher light when he dropped, when he came back, when he went back in and came back out?
Mm-hmm. That was the Rashbi.
Yo, I just
Then
hit
the
a
first
million. This box
Yo,
is
you
really
better buy the
working.
Dogecoin.
you going? You going or you not?
Merch,
The cave in,
Kiva.
Ve'kivan shavodaso haisa haba'as penimius
so
HaTorah.
since his whole work, his avoida, was in bringing out the panemius of Torah, which is called in the Zohar, Ilona Dechai, the tree of life.
Liyadai giloi be'olam.
What does it mean, tree of life? That there's something should grow from this, meaning that there should be a revelation in the world of this panemius of Torah.
Shazu tzorech hanahaga shetiyeh le'asid lavo.
So that required a conduct, which is the kind of conduct that's indicative of the future, that doesn't yet exist. His present was our future.
Lohaya kiem le dido inyan gulas.
So another way of saying that, what we said before, that the Churban didn't affect him, that he lived in Gaul, he lived in Rome, he was escaping the Romans.
Who?
But
Rash-
it's in the Vayochai. He was
Oh,
living in
yeah?
a cave, right? Escaping the Romans. But he didn't live in Gaulis.
Did you ever go to his cave in the
No, I
north?
never went to the cave.
I've been to his cave.
Yeah?
There is a carob tree outside of it.
Really?
Isn't it?
It's in
like
Pekin.
It's an Arab village, isn't it?
I think so. It's
He
in
was?
there. It's a city called
For
Pekin.
almost all night.
In that cave?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. He said Rabbi Ginsburg forgot in that cave all night. No, I was never
I heard it's like it's not a lot of people go there or something. right?
Yeah, it's, I don't think. I
So
don't know.
the-
I don't remember.
so
Maybe
this
it's
harks-
not so safe.
this harks
I
to
went in
me that-
seminary.
How simple, the Rebbe put this in such a simple way, right? Mamshik the Aleph in Goyla is Aramaic for Galus, and the Ula is the Ula. All you have to do is bring a little godliness down, and you're living in the same Dalit Amos, the same apartment, the same place, but it's no longer Galus. What?
The Zohar,
You're thinking hard.
I am actually. I've been thinking about a lot of what you're saying, and there's a lot of things that are very odd because the Zohar and Kabbalah and people who are masters in Kabbalah have the ability, like you said, to change things in the world.
Right.
But only things that Hashem will allow them to change, correct?
As far as I
Because
know.
even according to Kabbalah, you can actually make someone die. You can heal someone. You can alter the future. You can change things around.
Yeah. You know, you know what you're doing, and literally what they're doing. All of creation is formed with the letters.
Mm-hmm.
You just
It's
mix
also
up- mix
malachim.
up the
It's
letters.
also
Mhm.
involves malachim and
The Call
different
the
things
Golem
like
was
that.
created, right?
What was created with letters
So
of speech.
my question is though, before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar, all of this stuff existed. It was just
Yes.
Messiah.
It all existed. It all existed, but each there are, let's say, three major kavim in the development of Kabbalah. The first is Adam Rishon.
He wrote Sefer Yetzirah, right?
No,
Avram
that was
Avinu.
Adam Avinu. That's the
Avram
second.
What didn't Adam Rishon
There's a
write
Sefer
something?
Uriel, the angel Uriel. I forget exactly the title, maybe someone knows, which is attributed to Adam Rishon.
Hmm.
Now, the actual book, of course, was written much, much later. You have the same argument
It's
about
probably
the
like
Zohar.
chiseled into a stone.
No, it was
somewhere on the
not
wall.
written at all. It was a
No?
Masorah. It was a
Just
Masorah.
given over verbally.
Remember, Adam's
Right.
Shem and Ever, offspring. Excuse me. Yeah, Shem and
Yeah.
Ever, and then Noah. Noah also he isn't mentioned really although he was a big deal. He was the Rosh Hashiva of the academy that Avram Avinu learned in, right? And
Mhm.
Yaakov Avinu learned it also.
Who was?
Noah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
Academy of Shem and Ever,
Yeah.
which was offspring of
it's
Noah.
it's in
Right.
Tzfat.
But so you have Avram, you have Adam, and there's a sefer attributed to him. Then you have Avram Avinu, Sefer Yetzirah, and then the next big one is Shimon Bar Yochai,
Oh.
Sefer Zohar.
Okay.
Right. Now there are two schools of thought. The school of thought that we follow is the school of thought of the Ramban, which is that all of these books are simply not codification doesn't work for Kabbalah. Writings down of that teaching which had been given over and over from generation to generation, God to Adam, Adam to Noah, Noah to Avram, etc., all the way down. And in some period of time in medieval Europe, the first Zohar appears under the attributed to the writer of it being Moshe de Leon. And some people, which is not the school that we hold by, say he wrote the book. He learned, and then he just decided to write a book called the Zohar. Okay, that's not the Ramban's position. That's not our position. That is just a writing down, like the Gemara was a writing down of everything that was given to Moshe from Har Sinai. So the Zohar is a writing down, yes, sometimes later, of everything that was given over from God to Adam, to Noah, to Avram, etc., all the way down. No. So what?
There's no so what. I just you asked me. You said you noticed that I was deep in thought, and I was just wondering about the fact that Kabbalah has the capacity to a real Kabbalist who
Right.
knows the secrets can actually kill someone,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So why couldn't they take care of like
Uh-oh.
the
Certain
Romans, Titus, like
Okay, that's an excellent question. And
Maybe
I
they
would
weren't allowed
answer
to
that
do
by
it.
saying, just based on everything that I know, which is not a lot, based relative to other people, they could have. But it wasn't in,
The Rebbe killed
but it
Stalin.
wasn't in his plan.
Hoorah!
Hoorah. That's
It
true.
wasn't in God's plan. That's
Uh-huh.
not the way God wants it to unfold. And a true Kabbalist, there's, if you know that much and you can manipulate, you could become an evil person, totally an evil person.
Wasn't against it.
As we'll think about the Alter Rebbe and Napoleon, right? I mean, not that Napoleon was a Kabbalist, but he knew enough to know that he could manipulate certain things. If he got a hold of the Alter Rebbe's shoe or whatever it was, right? So he knew that. But at the same time, there's a destiny that's unfolding. And a Kabbalist, you asked me, or somebody asked me once, how you could identify someone who's worthy of being a Kabbalah teacher. And the first thing I said is they have to be Mesiras
halacha,
Nefesh for
yeah.
Torah. They have to be totally given over to Torah. Because if not, then you get into these weird spaces, right?
Yeah, but
So-
then you could have someone who knows all those powers, but it's coming from the Sitra Achra, it's
You
coming
could
from the
have
other
that,
side.
Exactly.
But you had like the witches during the times of like David
Yeah,
Amelech.
whether they reach
Or
that high or
Shalom.
not is not necessarily that they do. But yeah, you can manipulate. But if it starts with Tanya 1.1 Yira, the beginning of the avodah is Yira. Yira means bittul, means given over. If you're not given over, you can become a desperado with Kabbalistic knowledge.
Sorry,
Right.
I would give a quick question.
So, to answer your question, maybe they could have. Maybe they could have stopped Rome. But that wasn't what God had in mind, for whatever reason.
What was the Nakuda and Yadalid? What's the addition that he says?
The Nakuda of that ois,
Yeah.
Yudalit, that the purpose of the tzaddik is to live, what I would call, live the paradox. What's the paradox? The paradox is I'm in Gullus. But you want to know something? I'm not in Gullus.
I'm not what?
I'm not in Gullus. Right. Because I have a job to do. The tzaddik of this paragraph, Yudalit. I have a job to do, and that God has blessed me. Let's take me out of the picture. Has blessed Shimon Vayachai with this soul that's able to live in the Gullus in a state of Geula. But the next thing that's important in this paragraph, but it ain't about me. It's not about I'm going to feel so great because hey, I'm in Geula, and you are saying Nachum by the grave because you're in Gullus. No, the reason that I am in Geula, the reason God enabled me to be in Geula, is lahamshik, is to bring down that state of Geula, help you with it by the Gala Pneumius Satorah.
Help others realize that we're all in the state of Geula.
They were all in a state of Geula. Right. What do you think? You have any cliche? Open up your eyes? The Rebbe said, open up your eyes? And, what do you mean open my eyes? I mean, open up my eyes means to
Come to another level of consciousness?
a whole other level of consciousness that's permeated with Pneumius Satorah. Because that's what he's all about, Shimon Vayachai, Pneumius Satorah.
That's for
And
the
you
universe.
drench your mind in Pneumius Satorah in the right way. You can go crazy with it also. You can become lazy with it also. You become authoritative with it also. You become nuts, etc. So you got to be able to internalize it in a way that it's meant to be internalized. And if you do, yes, then your eyes are open. And by the way, I mean just from a little bit of experience, this isn't an all or nothing game. In other words, Gullus or Geula. As we know historically, Geula is a process, right? So individually, Geula is a process also. The process of more and more internalization of Pneumius Satorah, coupled with, and this is totally important, application of it in daily life. This is not about sitting on a mountaintop reading a book, or reading a book and then as a result of what you learn, visualizing numbers and letters and floating up in the sky. This is all, and back to your point, and then the hamshik.
Right.
The hamshik. Now this comes back, if you will, to the ultimate purpose of Tikun Olom. This is what our topic is supposed to be about, right? Because it says in Yeshayahu, that the world was created to be settled. The Chevra Ahavas Yisroel. The world was created to be settled. Now you see my hands when I'm settled, you're bringing down. You're bringing down something so that everything is at peace and harmony. That's the purpose of the Torah, that's the purpose of the Tzaddik, and that's the purpose of each one of us who are Amcha Kolim Tzaddikim. To mamshich, you could even quote from this, to mamshich Pneumius Satorah lamata, into the revealed part of the world, which is the Gullus. I mean, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's what that paragraph is about. So we're going to flip now to, where's it go? The end here,
The end game.
and we go. Well, the top of page 274 on the left. Second paragraph. Top of 274 now. According to what's been explained above, the whole deal of the Rashbi, that his whole deal was to bring down Geula in a way that it's muchash, that it's felt, that they could be felt as Pneumius Satorah ba'olam, that the Pneumius Satorah should be felt in the world. And I think now, I told you, I picked up, or we weren't here, but I picked up this sikha before Lag Boimer. I was sitting on a bench, and when I was thinking, what was our class going to be during the, 5-6 days later, I said, look, when I Shachar Kodesh, I have this sikha. I don't know what it's in it, but I picked it up, right? So here we go, at the end of this, we're approaching the end. This is really describing Tikun Olom. You could look at the word Tikun Olom. To bring down Pneumius Satorah in a way that's felt, so that the whole world is aware, it feels the presence of the unity of God in the world. Tak shegam bizman hagalus. So similarly, in the time of Galus, Yisharu hasidorim k'bizman habayis. That in the time of Galus, we, all of us, act as if I'm going to say, not as if, but with the experience of the time of Geula, and with the experience of the Beis HaMikdash being built, which was the experience the way Reb Shimon lived his life.
Where are we? Sorry.
Okay,
274 by the
second
bracket.
time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Ha'Torah Mevia es hashpos, and I want paragraph Ois Tez Zayin. Ha'Torah Mevias es hashpos ha'elyonis. The Torah brings down the most supernal flows, Gamli that bito gashmi, into physical utterance. The Meshanemer, as it says about the Torah, Eitz chayim hi l'machazikim bo. It's a tree of life to those who cling to it. So, I mean, in simple words, if you want to know the antidote, I mean, it's very stupid to say it. If you want to know the antidote to death, it's life. So bring life. Bring life from Panemius Torah into everything you do.
B'char to b'chaim.
And B'char to B'chayim. Right, exactly. And those who are who rely on her are enriched. And so also it says, B'smola oishe, v'koved. On the left side is richness and glory. The left side, you might think that richness is on the left. Right, because
No.
richness is contested. No.
Gevura.
It's like you said, or somebody said. It's coming through all this.
Right.
Coming through all this. Getting tempered by the furnaces of this world. Right? And that's an example, a metaphor that's used a lot of this. It is, you take a clump of dirt, and somewhere in that clump of dirt is buried something silver or gold.
Or
So you
diamond.
take us,
In a
clods of dirt, and buried within us is the nefesh elokis. How do you get that silver to become valuable and precious? How do you do it?
Silver to become valuable and precious.
Huh?
Heat in a furnace.
You put it in a furnace, you
Mm.
smelt it, right? So this is the furnace, right? This is the furnace. But the furnace, the heat, which if you were that piece of silver would be rather painful, this burning process is to burn off the dross so that the godliness shines. And that's the process of Tikun Olom. That's what we have to do. The world is manifesting itself in a gullus state. It's all falling apart. And today, I mean, we don't have to use much imagination to see how it's all falling apart. So it's all falling apart. There's an intrinsic cohesiveness that's there underneath everything. And guess what? It's up to us to reveal it and to burn away the dross. Take
Because
away.
on the other side of that is something so much more beautiful and so much more
Yeah.
refined.
B'lachein, the next paragraph. Hatzliach Rashbi. Rashbi was successful. So the Judei Eloi Hoya Churban, because he did it. He got there where living in the Roman Gullus, there was no Gullus.
Shilididei means that for himself.
Huh?
Shilididei.
Shilididei, by him,
By him, yeah.
like Hoya Churban, there was no Churban. And he was able to hashpia. He was able to stand above it, wherever you maybe not above it, but at a, as you say, a deeper, a higher level of consciousness. Idea Torah. And this is something that he actually did. He created. It's talking
Gold
about creating
coins.
with Kabbalah. Dinari Zohar Begashmis. He created gold coins
Gold.
for his students. Gold coins. Gold coins. Begashmis. And what was the chiddush of this? What was the big deal?
Gold coin.
Rak the kaksha who also zois that he did this. Leidish vilei.
gold.
He didn't do it for himself. He needed money. No. Elon talmidim, not talmidov, for his talmidim. Shoy shrurim adayim b'darga shel hargeshes hagalus, because they were still living in the level of galus.
Ugh,
So
but
you
you-
see, this galus gula thing is not an absolute state of reality outside you. It's a state that you bring to reality.
Okay. Because it seems to me that it's like, okay, after Rashbi did everything he needed to do, like what's left there for there to do? But clearly, we're still here. There's still what to do.
Yeah, he was like, as it brought in many persona in our tradition, opened up a channel.
Mm.
I mean, Avram Avinu opened up the channel for sure.
Right.
The channel of God.
Well,
And
kindness.
kind of, the world was
God-
blind. Was blind.
God consciousness.
to-
Chesed.
Yeah, but I don't mean the channel. I mean the
What he brought,
reality
his
of the
unique
singularity.
gift.
He made
Monotheism.
monotheism.
Monotheism. Yeah.
Was his gift to the world.
Right.
Right. That level of consciousness. And Shimon Bar Yochai brought the level of Geula to the world. Opened up the channel of Geula. And it's a channel that we've all inherited, or like little,
What do you mean he opened up the channel to go? What does that mean exactly?
he's the one who's singled out more than any other, who, as we said in the paragraph above, is Lahamshich Panimius Torah Lamata.
Because he wrote the Zohar?
Well, he wrote the Zohar because he lived it. And in the Zohar are the secrets of the way he lived.
Okay.
The writing wasn't the
Rabbi
same.
Shimon Bar Yochai was a student of Rabbi Akiva.
Correct.
Wouldn't you say that Rabbi Akiva was Mamshech? Rabbi Akiva was the one who literally
You
stood
were.
on the base of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and said and laughed and said, "I see that this nevuah came
You were.
true, so Mashiach is going to come. For sure, there's going to be a third Beis Hamikdash." So, wouldn't you say that Rabbi Akiva did that?
You would say that Rabbi Akiva did that. We're not.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it's not like a chiddush. The Zohar wasn't a chiddush. He just wrote down what he already learned from
like
beforehand.
The Gemara was not a Kiddush. Like everything that came, the
Right.
Midrashim were not Kiddushim. But what they were was condensations of them in such a way that us, the people at a lower level, could use it.
It's like the Tanya,
Rabbi
but
Akiva, Rabbi
Okay.
Akiva didn't. There's not Kabbalah attributed to Rabbi Akiva. Mishnahs. It's not Mishnah to Rabbi. It's not
Right.
Mishnah to Rabbi Meir.
right.
But there's certain let's
Kabbalah is Arizal.
all go according to Rabbi
Chaim
Akiva.
Vital.
But where did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai learn it from, if not
He
for in the
learned it,
yeshiva
of
with Rabbi
course.
Akiva?
Yeah, but maybe this is his chedusha, no? Right?
It's not a chiddush. That's what I just said. Like that's what I was asking.
Kol ma shetalmud vosik lachadish, everything which a genius student is going to
Make new.
make new was revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu. with
Okay,
himself.
in chadash tachas hashemesh, but
So in that sense,
that's
there's
not what
nothing
I'm
new.
saying.
But the ability to bring it down in such a way that people can get a hold of it and use it, that's
Meaning he
important.
distilled it, right? Is that a good
Yeah.
word?
He
Distilled.
distilled it. He distilled it.
Compiled it, put it
Yeah,
all
he-
together.
He ordered it.
It's distilled
He
water.
made it
Right.
accessible.
It's
right?
like what we attribute the Tanya to
Made
the Alter Rebbe,
accessible.
even though the Alter Rebbe distinctly
Redacted.
doesn't write his name because he feels
Beautiful.
like it's a compilation.
Exactly.
No, not
That's-
feels, but
that's
it was a
exactly the
compilation
same.
of all the things.
Well, he cites sources in case anybody's like, well, what are you making up this stuff?
Not
You know,
only that- but it's not only that he just cites sources. In all,
he doesn't
in
just.
all
I
of
mean,
his greatness, he is humble enough to say that everything you're going to find in this book is just stuff that I've collected from the mouths of other people or from
Correct.
other books. Now, the book is a Kiddush,
Right.
right? The Zohar is a Kiddush, but you're right. It's only a way of bringing out and revealing all the stuff that came before. So yeah, you could have we could be learning about Rabbi Akiva, and we could be learning about his group. We could be learning about Avraham Avinu, etc.
I'm just wondering the connection between the Zohar being the channel for Mashiach. If anything, I would think the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus is what brought that about.
Yeah, well, that's another distillation.
Right.
Wasn't it said like the Mashiach was in the chamber and
Right.
of the of Alter Rebbe? No, it wasn't it.
Yeah, look at
That's when Mashiach will come. So why wouldn't I'm not understanding that connection because
every generation has its capabilities and its limits. So God, in His infinite wisdom that we have nothing to do, decided there should be 6,000 years of something, and Mashiach will come. So who's around in that 6,000 years? Us, sitting around this table.
Nebo.
well
We need
at
a
the
way,
end of those 6,000 years, it's a long
we
time.
need a way of grabbing
yeah.
Panemius Torah that we couldn't have grabbed it if we sat at the Academy of Rabbi Akiva. Those souls were much
Higher.
higher souls. So, you know, you can like people distill wisdom in a book that's delivered to a child. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov did.
Yeah, but the irony is, that's interesting that you'd bring that up because now my question's even further. The irony is you can't even learn the Zohar until you're 40. So, if anything, the Baal Shem Tov and children should be, especially when it says that it's going to be the little kinderlach, and you're saying that just specifically that the Baal Shem Tov brought about Chassidus, which is much more easily translated and much more, it's like another, well, we know that Chassidus is higher than Kabbalah, but it's easier to understand for the regular people. For us, it's for every one of us.
More palpable.
We're like children.
We're like children.
So
So we need a children's book. And it's hard to say
It
this,
just doesn't make sense
but
to
the
me.
Tanya, relatively speaking to the Zohar, is a children's book.
Yeah, but if our generation is the
But
But we
generation,
need even
but
more.
But another thing has happened here. Through the distillation of Chassidus and kiddie books, kiddies have learned, us kiddies have learned
Dr.
certain
Susan.
things which enable us to go to the Zohar and understand it. But I mean, I have a book at home that's called Gardens from the Apple.
Apples from the
garden,
orchard. Apples from the
Apples from the
orchard.
orchard.
Apples
Remember that?
Wisniewski, yeah.
Yeah, Wisniewski,
Yeah.
also a former Rabbi Ginsburg student. And on every chapter, there's just quoting Zohar and Arizal. Zohar and Arizal.
Mhm.
It's not very graspable without a good grounding in Chassidus.
You read a Siddur, Esther, also. Come on.
If
just
we
not
are the
gonna understand.
if we're the generation of Mashiach, it would be like maybe I need to understand this a little bit more.
We're the lowest generation, right?
No,
The
I
whole-
understand that. I'm just trying to
there's a
understand why the
secret, yeah.
Zayhar, why the Rashbi opened up the channel for Mashiach.
Probably he opened it up more than any other thing for his time. That could be.
He opened it up so
Because every
that-
generation we have tzaddikim, we have chidushim, we have the Tanya that brought the Alter Rebbe himself was a new light. He's a neshama chadasha.
Right? That's
So I'm saying
my point.
everything is in like the progression toward Mashiach. So I think perhaps what that statement means is that it opened up a greater channel because it's deeper Torah, it's deeper sight,
Deeper
And then
sight
from there we
and
can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, deeper. Tanya, Chassidus, Sichas of the Rebbe. This is like the ends of
If
the
it helps,
ends.
think of a pipeline. It's a channel.
Kilu.
Scener, I call it a channel. It's really a pipe. So you can't take the water from the source. You can't take it from the iron.
You have to let it fall
It
through.
has to come through the pipe, narrow, and then you get the water. The same water refreshes you, gives you life.
But that's not
Just as
my
if you
question.
were-
But here's the thing.
I
Zay,
Can I say,
Yeah,
can
go
I say
ahead.
something?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think I'm not saying that this is the answer. Basically, the whole point of this mimer is explaining how the Rashbi was somebody who not only lived in a way that Gullus wasn't reality. The reality lived in everything was Gula, but that he also affected others to an extent that when someone came to his caver, there was a change by the other person. He's like, "Yo, wow, there really is no." As opposed to, like, we know the story. Like, I didn't hear it before, but Rabbi Kiva laughing at the flames.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's what he was experiencing. Wasn't necessarily that he was affecting other people to the extent that we know that the Talmudim passed away. So it could be that therefore it's attributed so much to Rashbi because he's the first one to, not necessarily the first one to be sort of echoing this idea of not living within Golos, but the first one to, because he's saying over here the whole point is that
Make it accessible.
to make it accessible to everybody else via the Zohar. So everybody else was sort of, in a certain sense, even Rabbi Kiva was like living in their glass castle, but they weren't coming down from it. As opposed to Rashbi was making that more palpable and chewable for other the white collar, blue collar people via the Zohar and via Chassidus.
but if
It's the
anything,
blue collar word.
right?
Blue
But
collar.
your analogy of the stream doesn't work in this regard because Chassidus is higher than Kabbalah.
Hold
So,
on.
So-
this is more
Hold
distilled than
on.
Kabbalah.
What does it mean that Chassidus is higher than Kabbalah? You know, you also learned it. Noitzukilos and Besoifon, Dafka.
Right.
Right? The beginning is wedged in the end. So it's a very interesting concept. And this analogy goes, a stone, the lowest, is really the highest. It's really the highest because the beginning is wedged in the end after. That's the advantage of Chassidus over Kabbalah. Because it's at the end, it has the preciousness in it, the etzem in it. Can you get that?
We always
Yeah.
learn.
Does that analogy work for you? A stone, we cannot live without stones,
Yeah.
right? Minerals.
Yeah.
Minerals.
Yeah.
Stone,
Is it like,
stone, being
um,
stone,
a
being
seed?
seed.
There's no life without stones.
Is the Zohar compared? Could you say it's like a seed that contains everything in it, but it wasn't yet developed until future generations?
Yes.
So
You could
that's
say that.
like a seed of a tree, or
Prior to the Zohar, you were
So
s-
it-
not
therefore
supposed to
it's
learn it
the
more than
first
one-on-one,
and the-
right?
What?
It was supposed to be transmitted like one-on-one,
student?
like just like one person at a time. It wasn't like meant for mass distribution.
What?
The secrets of the Torah.
Yeah. At that point, yeah, it wasn't a book for mass distribution. It was. Okay, but I don't think that's the essence of it. The essence was it's from our perspective, it's something you can't really glom onto. It has to come down.
The way that I've learned it, or the way that we're taught, is that Kabbalah comes from Chassidus, not vice versa, and that Chassidus is the oil. It's the deepest of the deepest.
That's what I mean. It's the Colossus. It's the beginning.
Right.
It's the beginning. Wedged in the end. The idea going around to say, I've never heard that said before. Chassidus spawned Kabbalah. Is that what it says?
It's higher than Kabbalah.
It's higher than Kabbalah, but it didn't come before. Essence of God is higher than any emanation of
Maybe-
God, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I think you're stuck on that, Esther.
I'm stuck on
That's-
why the Rashbi, like why desire. Like I'm okay.
Because he did it. He disseminated. He put it there on paper so that people, as other people have said, other people could
What's
eat
the
it.
connection
Could eat it.
between Zohar and Mashiach? That's what I'm asking.
The Chassidus of the Torah, it brings Mashiach. Like learning Chassidus brings Mashiach. Doing mitzvahs brings
How about
Mashiach.
this? Mashiach, what's the word Mashiach mean? Moshiach.
Hamshacha, continuation? No.
Oil.
Oh, anointing.
Anointed.
Right.
It's the
And
oil.
Chassidus is the oil. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
That's the analogy
If the
that's
Torah is
always
the-
used.
But
Right.
they're both the oil. But Chassidus is the oil in a way that's come down the lowest. So on the one hand,
Perhaps you
that
could say the
means
Zohar is the
two things.
olive.
It means two things. It's more accessible and it's a deeper level of oil. Because of Noach.
Okay, I don't want to hijack the class. I'm sorry. We can continue this conversation after we finish, but
We will?
I hope
It's not
so.
going anywhere.
I don't feel
No.
like it satisfies me what I'm trying to make
Okay,
a point.
fine.
But okay, thank you.
I
Well,
never heard that before. Chassidus is higher than Kabbalah?
Yeah,
yeah.
I always thought Chassidus came from
I also
Kabbalah.
thought
It
so.
That's
does.
common.
but that's
it
what I've been
derives-
told is a
clearly
misconception.
derives from Kabbalah.
Yeah.
But as it gets lower, it draws from the higher. For something to come low, it has to
But
come.
Chassidus still comes from Kabbalah, though.
It's like this simple mushal. I'm not sure why it's just a problem. If you
I don't
if you
even know.
if you want something to come really really far away or down, you have to put more energy in.
Right.
So Chassidus has that because it has more energy. It has the deeper level of oil. I love the look.
Isn't
I got
She's-
some other
she's not
questions
ready to
for
give
the
up.
class. I'm not giving up.
Let's
I'm
go
pretty
on.
stubborn about
everything
this kind of
comes
stuff.
according to what it needs in this generation?
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, but that's not her problem. Yeah, this generation
She
needs
has
it.
other
I
problems.
have many.
This generation needs that. This generation.
The bottom is the
I'll
top.
drink
I
to
mean,
that.
can you say this about Chassidus, that it's spoon feeding you what's in the Zohar?
Rabbi,
What?
Esther just wants you to say that we're crediting Mashiach to the Rabbi. That's all she wants you to say.
I actually was
Give
attributing
him a-
it to the Baal Shem Tov who started
Oh,
Chassidus,
close.
but yeah, but close, yes.
All right. Let's just go a little more for you. Okay, off the page. We'll go to the next page. Well, let's start this.
It's 10:15.
I put a bracket here. It is.
Wow.
In Tes Zion, then there's the second paragraph. V'lachen hatzliach Rashbi. Therefore, the Rashbi was successful. Shaladido loy hoya hachorban. Ladidoy. By him, there was no korban. And because of that, now you could say Rabbi Akiva also there was no korban, right? He was able to hashpia, to give forth al yedei haTorah, through the Torah. Oh, this is
The
we
gold
did this
coins.
paragraph.
The
Yeah,
gold
we did.
coins.
Okay.
So it wasn't about
Dinari
it.
Zahav.
Next paragraph.
Bagashmius.
Shahadi Hatziku, he was bothered with him. Oh, this is the story. This is just reaches the story.
Okay,
of
fine.
this.
Keep going.
The last voice. We'll finish the last two voices very quickly.
Yud
It's
Ches?
smooth.
Thank you.
Yud Zion. So now, ready? Now to
Uh-oh.
Venice. Now we will clearly have understood that the avoidance of Lagabi Rashbi, the service that was by the Rashbi, in Mudgash Hapelah Shel Lakichas Dinari Hazov Min Hashemayim, there was no wonder that he could bring down
Okay.
physical dinarim from coins from heaven.
Good Zion.
Gav Shehois Hashini Seder Hashemayim, Siddur Hashemayim. In other words, changing the order of the way natural events occurred. Shechein in Yonah Shel Rashbi. So was his Inyan. Leila Hakicha, not to take, Kim Dafka Hashrot Lamata. His whole being was to bring down from above to below. So don't be surprised that he could take spiritual energies and actually make them, fabricate maybe, into physical coins. Al yidei panimis atayr. As Siddi ha'asud lovi, he could fabricate the order of the future. Now, I don't know if Rabbi Akiva did
Sounds like Kishuf.
that. The Zehu, Taik Meshel Ma'im
starting.
Rashbi, and this is the main content of the saying of Rashbi. Shebechoyke lahagin al hagoydos. He is able, and we don't say this about Rabbi Akiva, to protect the generations. Shemimenu v'yadiyas Mashiach, that come from him. He's able to protect, to be a shield, a protection for all the generations from him until the coming of Mashiach. Ki Rashbi u'panimis atayra kushorim im HaMashiach. Because Rashbi and the panimis of Torah are tied with the Mashiach. So it's known.
What does it mean, protect?
Like a shield will protect you from being, in this case it means overcome by the galus.
Okay.
Keeps a wall of protection around you. If you learn Panimis Torah, again, you're living in the galus world from objective reality, but your consciousness is in
Right.
another place, so you're shielded from it. That's what it means to be shielded.
Okay, so that helps me understand. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
A little bit. Connection. There's a connection.
Okay, you do it.
We're getting
Whatever works.
I'm gonna get
The
Shabbat.
Rebbe
It's
is
no.
answering my question.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Savlanis.
It's no, but don't you ask why Rabbi
That
Akiva
he's the
didn't do
shield
that?
for the rest
What?
of the generations.
Do you have a question why Rabbi Akiva
Who?
didn't do that?
Well,
Let's leave this, okay?
I understand
Rashi?
now the way he's making the
Yeah.
connection between what it does, what is
Yeah.
what.
It actually shields us from the galus.
That's what I needed.
It's
Thank
a
you.
shield, which is tied to Mashiach.
Wait, Esther, why the Rashbi though?
Okay, fine, let's move. One Adam of you.
Hanania, if you want to be invited back.
It's no, ready? It's no.
No, you following us, did
No,
You
he's
guys
talking
out
about
there
the
still
Zohar
with us?
specifically.
There are
Oh,
still
the
with
Zohar
us.
is
Okay, good. Hade, it's no, you do it.
Where are
Okay.
So
you?
the last voice, Yud Ches. Chai.
Chai.
Hi.
Yoidea.
It's no, Yedua. It's no.
Alright.
Shemidei Shana Chayz, every year, Chayzin Hagiluyin Shehoyel Rishon in that day, return the revelations that were then there. Kishem Shebechol Pesvod B'Nissen, just like on every 15th of Nisan, Me'ir Yitzias Mitzrayim, that shines through the same kind of light that existed in the original Yitzias Mitzrayim. V'Bechol Shavuos, speaking of which is coming up.
In all the weeks maybe. I don't know if he means
Yeah.
every.
Speaking of, it's a recapitulation. It isn't just reviewing history. It's a
Matan Torah.
reenactment,
Matan
an
Torah,
actual
okay.
spiritual reenactment of what occurred then, Matan Torah. So Kach, similarly, Meir B'chol Lag B'Omer, there shines on every Lag B'Omer in Yonah Shel Rashbi, the whole Inyan of the Rashbi, the Siddur Hanhoga Shel Osid Lavoi, which is the ordering of, I'll put it in a word, the ordering of consciousness according to the conduct of the future to come. Oisa Mosa Rashbi L'Talmidim. That's what Rashbi gave to his students. V'Ledoris Aboim Acharo, and to the generations that we're in after him. The Haklilim Panimis Torah, and the whole generality of which is the energy, the powerhouse of Panimis Torah. V'Zunis Galso, the Havana, the Hasoda, Al-Yidei Torah Chassidus. Here you go. And this original powerhouse of Panimis Torah is what's revealed in a way that you can understand it and grasp it through the Torah Chassidus Chabad. Yichud V'Dor Achra.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Yeah. And especially in this last generation, or this later Achra, this last generation, Dor Mashiach, which is the generation Mashiach, Sheoz Yeh Kamed Dor HaRashbi, which will be like the generation of the Rashbi. In other words, we will have the consciousness when we reach a Geula consciousness. We'll have the consciousness that the Korban never occurred.
That the Korban never.
The Korban never occurred.
Korban.
Korban, not Korban.
That's how we can connect the people who passed away on Lag BaOmer.
What?
Say.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
That's the connection right there. That's what do you mean?
Because they're
That's
like
why
a korban.
that's why you wanted this. It's not like a korban. Just like the Rashbi passed away on Lag BaOmer, and the generation of the Rashbi, he brought him the time. The Zohar, it opened up the gates to to Mashiach.
Okay.
And the Rebbe is talking about over here, this generation with Chassidus Chabad, we are the generation also just like the generation of the Rashbi. So we also had Nistarim on Lag BaOmer in this generation.
Beautiful. Yep.
That's why
Which
he
is,
chose
which
this
is ultimately
Sicha.
also leading towards Mashiach as well.
Now I know why I chose the secret. No, but that's.
It became
That is
clear.
why.
But it's so
I thought you
interesting.
did that intentionally.
No, when I chose the Sikha, it was before Lag BaOmer. I found the
that's
Sikha.
very weird.
That's
Okay.
what I told you, or I tried to tell you. I didn't say it. Once.
Okay.
It was all Hashgacha Pratis.
Right.
Wow.
I found this on a bench at 770.
Hashem
I said,
sent it to you.
Lag BaOmer. I'll learn it
You
sometime.
found the Sikha on the
And
bench.
I learned it after the whole
In the
event.
Rebbe Shul.
And I said, wow.
Beis
we're
Rabbeinu
gonna
de
teach
Rabba-
this.
de Rabba.
We'll give it over. Right.
The-
I mean, talk about the Rebbe, right?
It's funny, like, I don't
Beis
even know
Rabbeinu
The Rebbe
Shul
is-
Baba.
Shabbat Baba.
How the Rebbe influences out of body. It's interesting. I mean, we say this over and over in Chassidus, but when you get tuned into Hashgacha Pratis, it's a whole different world.
Mhm.
You know, when you stop fighting, and you just know that it is being orchestrated, and you know it's being orchestrated at such a wondrous level that you can never understand it, and that inability to understand turns into a powerhouse of awesomeness.
You never understand.
And that's the Pinimis of Torah, where the experience of Dulles never existed in the first place.
Right.
And that's revealed on the Pinimis of Torah after Gashmis, B'Teva, Nivra, Nigra, and it should be, of course, in the Gashmis, which is full of goodness and full of revealed godliness.
Amen.
Shkach.
The Karav Mamish. Take it from me, Ad.
So the
It's
point
just
of
a
it
change
is
of head.
living in a good old
It's
mindset.
only a state of mind.
I ain't going to work tomorrow.
Heck yeah.
Hashtag.
Go pack
All
your
right,
bags.
next week,
Mashiach's coming.
next
Don't go to
week
work.
we will be learning
Shir
right.
Sishin Kim.
Maimer Chassidus, probably from the Alter Rebbe on Shavuos, because we got one shot.
Great.
Yalla.
Shavuos next Tuesday?
Shavias.
Next Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Shavuos.
So like this.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wait, I feel like we need to sing.
My,
That's
the,
exactly what
What
we're
do you
saying.
want to
Right.
sing?
no, the nigga you sing after you finish your minor.
No, that one. No. Oh wait, it's a sikha, so I don't want to sing that. I want to sing. It's gonna be a
Magnum
little,
opus.
little,
That's what I was thinking. That song.
little, I can't think of one singing.
Interesting. This Adam has a little piece. Just listen to one sentence, guys.
Yeah.
Esther,
Yeah, I read that, by the way.
you ready?
While you weren't
Rambam clearly indicates that the acquisition of knowledge of Hashem is the most essential and primary aspect of the Messianic era. That's Pnimis HaTorah. Everything else is secondary.
To make Mashiach come.
Long article. Who's on it? Now that we just who's writing it?
No. Shimon.
Opa.
Shimon who?
Markel.
Oh, he's brilliant. Shimon Markel from California.
Las Vegas.
Those, now he lives in Las
He's
Vegas.
the one
Yeah.
that does your class.
Those boys are brilliant.
He's
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, like Shabbos.
Guys are brilliant.
That was okay.
Oh, you guys all went to Jews
Can
Fest
you
together?
send me this?
All of us
Because
go
it's too
over
much.
together.
I heard.
Yeah.
Apparently not as.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was
Okay, thank you.
it's a little bit weird.
Ananya, what's your name?
Adam?
Hey,
Welcome, by the way.
Yeah,
You haven't
welcome.
come to the class before.
Oh, I just.
He just blew into town.
Oh, okay. You don't live here?
No, I just got here.
Oh, welcome. So
Don't
we'll
do
be
it, man.
expecting
Don't
you
do it.
every week?
Doing that.
Okay.
This guy's made a pretty.
Yeah?
He-
You want to Uber? Actually, the
Good
rabbi
night,
wants to
John.
ride if you want to ride.
probably-
I just
John,
want to,
good night.
John,
Feel better.
thank you for coming. It's good to see you. Can I end this for you? Yeah? It's okay.